Hi everyone, this is Nivedan again here from Coffee and Startups, and this is the place where we simplify the world of startups for you. We have a very exciting guest today, Arunabh Sinha. He's the founder of UClean, India's biggest laundry and dry cleaning brand. He's also a senior of mine from IIT Bombay, and he's been featured in Entrepreneur India 35 under 35. So here are some mind-boggling numbers for you to get an idea. UClean was the fastest chain to hit 200 stores in 2019, and majority of these stores are profitable. UClean is present across 50 plus cities, handles tens of millions of items each year, and provides employment to thousands of people through this franchise. With such a remarkable growth curve, when I found out about them, I got extremely curious, and I am now I'm looking forward to this discussion to figure out what's happening behind the curtain. How is Arunabh and his team making all of this happen? So hi Arunabh, welcome to Coffee and Startups. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Nivedan. Thank you so much for having me, and really excited to be a part of this podcast. That is something that I've been following for quite some time now. So an opportunity to actually come on the podcast and share my story is something that I'm really excitedly looking forward to.
Appreciate this, Arunabh. I really appreciate you making time today, this morning. And I am actually looking forward to a very good conversation. So, let me dive straight in. Let's start off by giving a little bit of context about what UClean is and what it does in a very brief way so that whoever's watching this knows what's going to come ahead.
Sure. So very simply put, UClean is basically in the business of organizing something that has been happening for centuries, which is basically washing your clothes. So most of us, even today, are accustomed to the idea of having a dhoti come to your place, pick up the dirty clothes, wash them somewhere by the side of the river, maybe, and then deliver it back to them. So this is also what we primarily focus on. But the only difference being that we treat laundry as a very hyper-local neighborhood concept. So we set up small outlets, UClean outlets, where you have the equipment, you have the cleaning chemicals, and you have a highly trained team who clean your clothes, package them, and then deliver it back to you. With the biggest difference being that as a customer, you have the option. You can directly go to the UClean website, or you can download the UClean app and place a request from there. And at the time requested by you, the nearest store would send their delivery boy to your place, get the clothes collected and get them cleaned and deliver it back to you within 24 hours. And the biggest USP, or I would say the most interesting fact, is that we clean your clothes by the weight of the clothes. So we have pioneered what is called the laundry by the kg concept, where we would weigh the clothes and then charge you according to the weight of the clothes.
Got it. So I've actually way before knowing that it was being run by you or anything I knew about the business, I was a customer first. I was living in Bangalore about two and a half years ago. Two and a half years ago when I first used your services. Did we? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I remember I have used your dry clean as well as the by the kilo thing. It's 250 rupees a kilo that I paid in Koramangala branch.
Okay.
Something like that, right? And I was actually wondering as a customer and as a guy who thinks about business models in general, that why would someone make such a big chain? When I got to know about UClean, how is someone doing it so organized, and are there enough margins for this business to work in the first place, right? So these are some questions that had occurred to me back then purely as a customer, but now I'm glad I'm going to get some of these answers today. So, I would love to explore more about UClean, but before that, it would be great if you could share a little bit of your journey. I see that you've spent majority of your career around franchisee business models, right? And it's not a typical path that a lot of IIT alums pursue, where people have gone into FMCGs and banking and consulting, right? But franchisee is something that I've noticed is very uncommon. So I want to know, how did you get into that, and how did your journey shape you into becoming a very well-known, recognized face in the franchisee model world today?
Sure. So I would also say that franchising happened to me initially by accident. And then because I got an exposure to it, I really started loving it. And now I have been working in the franchising space for more than a decade with UClean, and before that also I have founded another brand which was again predominantly in the franchising space.
Yeah.
So after graduating from IIT, I worked for a year with this company called ZS Associates. I was working out there of their Pune office, and I was basically a data analyst. So used to do a lot of number crunching and then feed that data to my manager who was living in the US. And then that manager would feed it to the principal would feed it to the client. So when we were at IIT, consulting for us was all about the opportunity to interact with the client directly. But those dreams of having a client-facing role were shattered when I started with ZS Associates, and I realized that between me and the client, there is itself a very big layer of my senior reporting managers. And when I look at it in hindsight, it was the right decision. But at that point in time, because I was young and I was naive, I thought that I am someone who should be interacting with the client directly and not through multiple layers. So I worked there for close to a year, and I got really frustrated. So I exited ZS Associates one day on a whim. And then I started looking for opportunities. And at that point in time, someone advised me that eventually, what do you want to do? So I had the lofty dream of going to Harvard or a Stanford for my MBA program. So my senior from my hostel, he advised that if you want to go to a Harvard or Stanford, you need to have a very strong social sector story. So then I started fishing around for jobs in the social sector. And I came across this Mumbai-based not-for-profit consulting firm called TechnoServe. And TechnoServe basically worked with companies like Cargill, companies like Bunge, and tried to connect them directly to the farmers so that the middle layer of Aratiya is removed and the profit goes directly to the farmers. So I worked there, and fortunately, when I was working there, the last project that I worked on was an India market entry project, where I worked with a company called Vita Coco. And Vita Coco at that point of time was a startup. So they had just started off in the US, and they were procuring coconuts from Brazil, and they were packaging it in Tetra Packs and selling across the US. Today, Vita Coco is a publicly listed company listed on the New York Stock Exchange. But I was very lucky because they were just starting up. So the founder was talking to me directly, helping me understand. The main objective was to tie up with farmers in India, coconut farmers in India, and procure directly from India, and not have a layer of middlemen in between. So that project, I worked for close to 4 months. And during those 4 months, I got a lot of insights into how founders think, what does new market entry entail, what are the things that you should research for, what are the potential challenges. And I really enjoyed it. But I worked at TechnoServe for close to 12 months at a salary which was less than 50% of what I was drawing at my first job. So my bank balance had gone dry. I was borrowing money from my friends and classmates. So that's when I got frustrated. I left the company again on a whim, and then I started thinking about what to do next. The next idea that I started thinking was that market entry consulting could be something that could be very exciting. You get to interact with a lot of people. You get to know about cultures. You get to know about how founders are thinking. And that's when I started a company called Frank Global. I was fortunate. I was invested on day one by this company called Franchisee India, which is today Asia's largest franchising company. And the founder of Franchisee India, Gaurav Maria, he really liked the idea of what I was trying to propose. And he incubated us in his office. And we were very lucky. The first project that we got was working with Harley Davidson and helping them set up their assembly level plant in Manesar. And that became a very big testimonial, which we started showing to other prospective clients. And then over the next 5 years, we worked with a lot of companies, predominantly in the franchising space. So with companies like Carl's Jr. Burgers, Johnny Rockets Burger, mainly American brands that used franchising as a model for expansion and that wanted to enter into India. So I want to those 5 years.
I want to interrupt you here for one question. You said you worked for 2 years net before starting Fran Global. How did you have the conviction and confidence to say कि मैं जाऊँगा और franchisees को consult करूँगा for India market entry within 2 years? How did that happen?
I would also say because in some ways I was naive. I didn't have a lot of responsibilities on my shoulders, married nahi tha, challenges nahi the, and not to blame any company, any organization, but my first experience with a highly structured corporate was personally very disappointing. मतलब बहुत ज़्यादा hierarchy था.
So you had kind of given up on the idea of a job कि यार मैं job तो नहीं करूँगा अगर ऐसी होती है तो job. Is that how you felt?
Yeah, I would say honestly, yeah, that can be called my eureka moment कि मुझे बड़ी कंपनी में job नहीं करना है, मुझे amazing office में नहीं जाना है. It is very boring, it is very suffocating, and I also worked for a year with the social sector. The idea was very good, the work was very challenging, but पैसे बिल्कुल नहीं बन रहे थे. So I also realized कि social sector या impact sector में काम नहीं हो पाएगा मुझसे. So the next third option was कि एक बार let's give me a try on startups. So the eureka.
These companies, big international companies who wanted to enter India, they must be looking for some sort of credibility in the team. What was their thought process saying there's a young guy, right straight out of college, 2 years? What was their angle? Why were they getting you to consult them? Is it because of Gaurav Marya's reference?
So both. First project, we were very lucky. So the first project that I landed was because the person that was handling the entire Asia expansion was our college alumnus. So he was someone who had graduated in 90s, and then he had been given the charge of developing entire Asia for them. So I wrote out a cold email to him saying that I am also an alumnus from the same college and this is what I plan to do. And fortunately he responded. So I had just written out an email. I never thought that he would respond, but he did respond, and then he asked me to meet him at a 5-star hotel in Delhi. And then he said, so we have created this company, but you don't have a backing. So you don't have an experience. So kaise karoge? And that is when I said that we have been invested into very recently by Franchisee India and Gaurav Marya. And he would be there to guide us, handhold us through the entire process, but we would be leading it. So that kind of convinced him. And the moment this guy came on board, it became a big testimonial for us. And the good thing is because वो college senior थे, तो wherever we requested him, sir, ये brand पे enter करना चाहता है, but they're asking for a testimonial. So can you speak to the owner of this company? And he was always there to help.
For people who are watching this, they should know that IIT alums fully exploit their networks. Every one of us is guilty of it.
And it is also important जब हम build कर रहे थे, and this is something that I'll again talk about later during the podcast, is कि if you study countries culturally, behaviorally, consumption wise, you would realize, and it is very surprising, while typically we want to ape the Western culture, we want to do what the Americans and Europeans are doing, but we are much more similar to Southeast Asia, both in terms of standards of living, behavioral pattern, culturally we are very, very similar. So this is something that clicked to me very early. So I used to spend a lot of time in Southeast Asia, particularly between Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur and Manila. And while I traveled to these cities, what I realized, and something that stayed with me throughout, was that laundry in particular was a segment that literally exploded. So if you went to say Jakarta in 2010, you would hardly see any laundromat. वहाँ पे जो भी था, it was all run by the local धोबी. वहाँ पे भी धोबी बोलते हैं, वो भी बाइसिकल पे आते थे, कपड़े लेके जाते थे और धोबी घाट पे धोते थे. But from 2010, when I was first exposed to the dhobi culture, and then 2011, I suddenly saw laundromats coming up. And by 2015, Jakarta and Kuala Lumpur had more than 3,000 laundromats. So I had literally seen laundromat as a concept exploding in Southeast Asia. And that stayed with me. That stayed as a thought with me. That stayed as an opportunity with me. And in 2015, when I exited Frank Global, I sold it off to Times of India and Franchisee India. I became the director for the entire North India business for this hotel chain called Tribo Hotels. And Tribo was just coming up. So I was entrusted with the responsibility of developing entire North India for Tribo Hotels, bring hotel partners on board, work on customer delight, work on driving higher sales, etc. And when I started running Tribo Hotels, what I realized was that क्योंकि budget hotel है, तो एक budget hotel में generally you get far more challenges than you would get in a 5-star hotel. But the biggest challenge, almost 60% of the escalations were coming because of laundry. या तो आपकी चादर गंदी है, या आपके टॉवल्स गंदे हैं, या फिर पिलो कवर गंदा है,
amazing insight.
And I worked there for at Tribo. I was there for about 11 months, and in those 11 months I realized कि बजट होटल का ट्रैवलर सबसे ज्यादा लॉन्ड्री से परेशान, एंड जो होटल वाले थे वो हमें बोलते थे यार आपको हमारी लॉन्ड्री से प्रॉब्लम है, देन व्हाई डोंट यू गिव अस अ बेटर सॉल्यूशन, व्हाई डोंट यू फाइंड अ वेंडर फॉर अस एंड वी विल डू द टाई अप. So when they started throwing this challenge at me, I started doing a deeper research on the industry, and two things really stood out. So of all that research, two things that really stood out was, one, ये जो industry है, it is extremely unorganized.
Yes.
So in 2016, almost 99% of the industry was controlled by the local hobby. But the second biggest, I would say, eye-opener was that this is a $50 billion plus industry. In 2016, KPMG had brought out a report where they said that laundry industry in India is $76 billion. So I thought and I saw that itni badi industry, itna zyada unorganized, there's such a huge potential to tap into it. And I don't do it, somebody else will do it, and then I'll go around saying कि यार ये idea मुझे पहले आया था, मैंने किया नहीं. So then again I left Tribo towards the end of 2016 and I started UClean. And when we started UClean, obviously we did not have funds. So franchising was one way to look at it. So what I started doing was I started speaking to a lot of investors that I had interacted with while I was building my previous company, Frank Global. And I started pitching the idea of laundry, setting up a laundry store in India to them. And these are all investors जिनके पास पैसे थे, but laundry industry का understanding नहीं था या background नहीं था. So they all lauded. They said कि यार बहुत जबरदस्त idea है, great idea है, ये तो बहुत अच्छा जाएगा. लेकिन we will not be the guinea pig. तो पहले आप चला लो, 4-5 आउटलेट चला लो, 10 आउटलेट चला लो, फिर हम पैसे लगाएंगे. So after getting rejected by close to 70-75 such investors, I decided to change track and I started reaching out to the existing dry cleaners in Delhi NCR. तो अगर आप देखोगे आज से, and I'll give you a very relevant example. So I come from Bihar, born and brought up in Jamshedpur, and my mom, she has I've never seen her wear anything except a साड़ी. वो सोती हैं साड़ी में, जागती हैं साड़ी में, इवेंट पे जाती हैं साड़ी में, ओकेजन पे जाती हैं साड़ी में. She wears nothing else. But when I talk about my wife, in the last 6-7 years that we have been married, she would have worn a साड़ी maybe 10 times. So there's a huge change that is happening in terms of the kind of clothes that we wear. So from very traditional clothes which require a lot of dry cleaning, we have moved to a very casual kind of a culture which does not require dry cleaning. So whatever you are wearing right now, the shirt that you are wearing or the shirt that I'm wearing,
this doesn't require it.
Does not require dry cleaning. It requires a simple laundry or a simple wash.
Right.
I started reaching out to the dry cleaners of Delhi NCR, जिनके छोटे-छोटे outlets थे, and try to convince them कि सर आपका business dry cleaning का है जो खत्म हो रहा है. The market is shrinking and it is being taken up by the laundry industry. So if you partner with us, if you invest in a laundry, then we would work with you on helping you build your business, streamline your operations, help you generate customers. So again, obviously they said कि यार कोई background है नहीं और हमें सिखाने आया है. So I had a lot of interesting meetings with these dry cleaners. A lot of them, some of them were very rude, some of them were understanding, but literally nobody wanted to do it. But finally we found a dry cleaner who had about 7 outlets between Gurgaon and Delhi, and he said कि idea अच्छा है, जो आप बोल रहे हो उसमें भी logic है. I am ready to invest, but मैं नहीं चलाऊंगा. आपको मैं 2 आउटलेट दूंगा, 1 इन गुड़गांव, 1 इन दिल्ली. आप उसको यूक्लीन कन्वर्ट कर लो, सारा कन्वर्जन का इन्वेस्टमेंट मैं करूंगा, लेकिन मुझे गारंटीड रिटर्न चाहिए कि मैं जो भी पैसा लगा रहा हूँ 20 लाख 25 लाख, वो मुझे आप एटलीस्ट 3 साल में वापस कर दो. चलाने की सरदर्दी आपकी, प्रॉफिट लॉस आपका, मैं आपको 2 आउटलेट दे दूंगा, रेंट्स वगैरह भी आपको मैनेज करना है. तो this was our first click, and we started. So in the franchising industry, this model is called franchisee invested, company operated. So the franchisee invested and we started running the operations. Next 5-6 months, we made a lot of mistakes. We learned from the mistakes. We created a lot of operations manuals, SOPs, systems and processes, technology. And within 6-7 months, we realized that ये ऐसा मॉडल है जहां पर आप दूसरे पैशनेट एंटरप्रेन्योर्स के साथ पार्टनर करके उनको भी लॉन्ड्रर्स बना सकते हो. Because there's no rocket science involved. Machines हैं, machines अच्छे से लग जानी चाहिए, बेसिक हाइपर लोकल मार्केटिंग होनी चाहिए, डिजिटल मार्केटिंग अंडरस्टैंड करनी चाहिए, टेक्नोलॉजी ऑलरेडी है. So you can very easily enable, equip and empower someone who doesn't have any background in the laundry industry but wants to become an entrepreneur or wants to have his own startup to become a franchisee of UClean. So end of 2017 is when we started franchising. And in the last 5 years, we have now moved to about 300 franchise partners across 82 cities of India. And some of these are very, very small cities, but fortunately for us, most of them are performing and most of them are profitable.
Wow, this is amazing. There couldn't be a more precise way to explain an entrepreneur struggle. Ki investors ke paas jaane, they're not funding you. You're reaching out to potential existing laundry players, or rather dry clean players, smaller local guys. They don't put in faith in you, and finally someone gives a shot. And that's where you break through. So I think ये बहुत ही classic roller coaster of trying something which has not been done before has. But it must be given the fact कि बहुत ही unorganized market था, was not having competitor like a big advantage that you always had in the beginning, first couple of years?
I would say so. When we started off and when we were trying to sell franchisee, हमारा initial competition was कि मेरे पास अगर 20 लाख रुपए हैं, तो my competition was not a laundry. My competition was a restaurant, a salon, a preschool, I would say a gym chain. Because when you look at the franchising industry and you look at it deeply, you would realize that 95% of the people who decide to buy a franchisee or invest in a franchisee, they actually come in with a clean slate. कि मेरे पास 15 लाख रुपए हैं, 20 लाख रुपए हैं, 30 लाख रुपए हैं, मुझे लगाना है, मुझे फ्रेंचाइज लेनी है, बट मुझे नहीं पता मुझे रेस्टोरेंट चाहिए या मुझे सैलून चाहिए. So my biggest competition in that sense has always been Javed Habib Salons, because वो भी 15 लाख में बन सकता है, मैं भी 15 लाख में कर सकता हूँ. And it is a chain that has close to 2,500 or 3,000 salons across, I don't know, 150 or 200 cities of India. Plus, obviously, there's the pull of Javed Habib, the celebrity salon artist, which is a very strong pull because people want to get associated with a celebrity like him. So or say even a pharmacy chain like an Apollo pharmacy or a Guardian pharmacy, which can again be set up with the same investment. So initially जब हम sell कर रहे थे, तो we used to explain to them why laundry and why not a pharmacy or why not a restaurant or why not a salon.
Amazing. So let's dive further into it. Let's pick the customer first. Who are these potential customers when you were starting out? You started out in Delhi, Gurgaon outlets. That was your first couple of stints. So who is your customer and what is their exact pain? Where were they struggling that they said कि यार वो भी नहीं चलेगा मुझे. I want something more reliable, organized and branded like a UClean. Why?
So with the Dhobi, the biggest problem that has always been there, and I would give them a lot of credit. जो industry आज है $70 billion or $75 billion, it is them. It is not organized players like us who have built that industry into a $70-75 billion. But the challenge is that they don't inspire trust. And the biggest reason, so while we were building UClean, we interacted with a lot of customers, close to 1,000, 1,500 customers. And these were not survey-based customers, but actually reaching out to them to understand कि क्या-क्या challenges आते हैं. And what we realized, a common theme across India was कि यहाँ पर transparency नहीं है. क्योंकि laundry industry में आप देखोगे तो biggest challenge is that the value of service versus the value of products being serviced में बहुत बड़ा gap है. If today आप एक UClean store को 20 shirts देते हो to say wash and iron, I'll probably charge you about 500 rupees, wash it, iron it and deliver it back to you. But those 20 shirts today would have costed you nothing less than 30,000 rupees. आप average एक शर्ट का 1,500 का कॉस्ट पकड़ोगे तो प्रॉब्लम ये है कि कस्टमर को एक डर बना रहता है कि मैंने अपने 30-40 हजार के कपड़े दिए हुए हैं, वो बंदा मुझे 400-500 चार्ज कर रहा है, जो भी चार्ज कर रहा है, अगर वो कपड़े खराब हो गए या वो कपड़े आए ही नहीं तो क्या होगा. So transparency has been the biggest challenge of the laundry industry. Because once the dhobi takes the clothes from you and then say he delivers it back to you after a few days, in those few days, what has happened with your clothes is something that you're not privy to. Where are your clothes getting washed? What kind of equipment? What kind of chemicals? How the clothes are being handled? That is something that you have no visibility into. And this is something that creates a lot of mistrust and customers wanted यार थोड़ा सा marginally higher भी होगा, we don't mind, but I need to know मेरे कपड़े कहाँ धुलते हैं, कौन सा डिटर्जेंट है, कैसी मशीन है, कैसा मैन पावर है, कपड़ों को कहाँ पर पटक रहे हैं, क्या कर रहे हैं. I want that visibility.
So if I'm just looking at it from my personal experience, I've had it, of course, in a more limited way. My mom would be probably she's taken up more responsibilities of laundry, for example, and she deals with the dhobi regularly. Transparency I can understand, but about the quality of service, like in terms of there are so many different types of fabrics which may or may not release color, which may or may not sustain a certain kind of temperature, right? Whenever they're ironed, let's say, which may or may not react rightly to the certain chemicals. So it's more what I thought was that it's more about the you can say reliability of service. That whatever fabric I hand over to this person, to this company, they should be equipped enough to handle it rightly. And that, so apart from transparency, it was this trust also missing, that पता नहीं मेरे कपड़े के साथ क्या करेगा, एक बार पहले भी खराब किया था, and this one I'm worried about. So is that again equally a big issue?
It is a very big issue. कि मतलब मैं कपड़े दिए थे, अब पता नहीं कैसे धोया. So that's what I'm saying कि प्रोसेस में विजिबिलिटी नहीं है, तो लोगों को डर लगता है कि मैं अपनी शेरवानी दूंगा, मुझे वो शेरवानी 5,000 की लगी, अब मैं वो शेरवानी उनको दे दी और इन्होंने किसी और कपड़े के साथ मिक्स कर दिया. And if that कपड़ा bleeds, then I'm losing my शादी की शेरवानी forever. A lot of these clothes that we have very emotional attachment to them.
Yes.
मैंने ये शेरवानी शादी पर पहनी थी, या ये ब्लेजर मैंने कॉन्वोकेशन के टाइम पे पहना था. So these are clothes that we would want to preserve at whatever cost. We don't mind paying any value for it, but we want it back in the same state that I'm giving it to you. So, and this was obviously a very big problem.
No, makes sense. And what would be the typical additional amount that a customer is paying to you versus a dhobi? What is the difference there right now on an average?
So for tier 1 city, if you look at it, the difference is negligible. So it would not even be say 5 to 10% because tier 1 में dhobi के लिए भी operating costs are pretty high. But when I go to a non-metro city, like for example Jaipur, where you're sitting right now, right. So there the pricing would be about 10 to 15% more expensive than the local dhobi.
10 to 15%. Okay. Yeah, that doesn't sound very big in that way.
Right.
Makes sense. Got it. So now this is what the customer thinks, and you are now the bigger part of this is about the entire force of all these local franchisees that have partnered with you, that have shown faith in you, and most of them are running profitably, right? Now I want to understand their perspective. With a fresh slate, that I don't know anything about the franchisees, what their motivation is, and how exactly are they operating with UClean. So can you give me some perspective on who this person is, right? This potential franchisee who you approach. How do you find this person is also another question that I have. And then what problem are you solving for them precisely?
Sure. So what is a franchisee? If you look at it, franchisee is typically a clone of your brand, right? मतलब आप एक बड़ा brand run करते हो, you are controlling entire India or you are running it globally, and then you have someone who is doing exactly the same thing for you in a neighborhood. So for example, I have an outlet in say C-Scheme in Jaipur. So my franchise partner is doing exactly what we are doing at a brand level, offering laundry services, offering dry cleaning services, shoe cleaning, bags cleaning, but she's more restricted to say C-Scheme in Jaipur. So she's a smaller clone, but she's doing exactly what we as a brand are doing. And to be able to do that, she has acquired the franchise rights of UClean for C-Scheme with a commitment from my side that we would not be opening a second outlet of UClean in C-Scheme.
Yeah.
That is how fundamentally franchising would work. Different brands would have slightly different terms and conditions. The bigger the brand, the more stringent the terms and conditions. But broadly, this is how you would make franchising work. Now, when I talk about the profile of my franchise partners, I would always divide them into mindsets. So there are two mindsets that typically come and join us. One is people with an operator mindset. The second is people with an investor mindset. Yeah. So operator mindset वाले वो होते हैं जो कि throughout will be involved in the running of the store. वो स्टोर पे बैठेंगे, वो स्टोर पे अपना खून पसीना सब बहाएंगे, कस्टमर से बात करेंगे, जरूरत पड़ेगी तो कपड़े धोएंगे, आयरन करेंगे, सब कुछ करेंगे. Investor mindset is someone who is looking at UClean more from an investment perspective कि आज मैं अगर 20-25 लाख लगा देता हूँ, एक टीम बिठा देता हूँ और वो टीम चलाएगी, मुझे महीने के इतने मिलते जाएंगे, तो मुझे शायद FD से बहुत अच्छा रिटर्न मिल जाएगा. So an investor mindset for a person would typically compare you to an FD or to an RD कि मैं अगर रेस्टोरेंट में लगाऊंगा तो मुझे क्या FD के कंपैरिजन में रिटर्न मिल सकता है, UClean में क्या मिलेगा, किसमें रिस्क कम है, किसमें रिस्क ज्यादा है. लेकिन मैं स्टोर पे नहीं आऊंगा because I'm a very busy person. I might be running other businesses. I might be professionally employed. So maybe weekend पे मैं एक बार आ जाऊंगा, या मेरे मम्मी आ जाएंगी, या पापा आ जाएंगे. These are the investor mindset people, and both are successful. So I would say, if I talk about my current mix, it would be about 50% operator mindset, 50% investor mindset. And investor mindset would include people who are professionally employed using this as a side income, or businessmen who already have multiple businesses. This becomes another addition to their kitty. Or it could also be about people who are in the business of money lending, financing, who use this as another source of revenue generation.
Wow. Okay.
So ऐसे लोग भी होते हैं, but I will be also honest कि the more profitable ones are who are putting their blood and sweat in the business. So there you have a very, very interesting mix. So we have a lot of homemakers who used to work professionally somewhere, then they had a kid because of which they took a sabbatical or took a break. And then after the kid has grown up, say the kid is 4 or 5 years old, they decide that they want to do something, but they don't want to go back to a job. They want the flexibility. They want to be an entrepreneur. So they come, they join hands with us, and we have a very significant percentage of such women who have joined us in UClean. And then you would also have, especially what has happened is that during COVID and post-COVID, a lot of attrition has taken, right? A lot of people have lost their jobs, a lot of people have been fired. So in the last couple of years, we have actually got a lot of people who were professionally employed, who lost their jobs. And now because of COVID, suddenly jobs are no longer secure. You keep hearing about the bloodbath that is happening at startups, 12,000 people fired, 25,000 people fired. So we do get a lot of such people now who believe that if we have to take the risk, then job is now equally as risky as a business. So let's give the business a shot.
Amazing. No, these are some very interesting profiles of people you mentioned. And when you mentioned this homemaker profile, right? I personally relate with that a lot because when I was working with Meesho last, I had this opportunity. I was the first person after the CEO with it to kind of go on a field trip to create a new category. That is how I started off there. And I spoke to some 7-8 of our top entrepreneurs in Lucknow and Ghaziabad, right? And I went there to these cities and I spoke with these women, and it was boggling for them. It was a big deal to be coming back to. Some of them were coming back to workforce, and some of them had only this as an opportunity to be able to do something with some flexibility, where they could simply go on Meesho app and share things on WhatsApp. So I relate with that persona a lot because of the two personal stories they've shared. Like literally, they've shared it here, and I'm sitting down listening to their story and crying. That is so inspirational, and so much struggle they've been through, that whatever amount of flexibility plus financial freedom that they can get is just something like a treasure to them. And when you mentioned that some of your most successful profiles are homemakers, to someone like me or someone who's very insider to Meesho would understand it immediately. But otherwise, I think people would be slightly boggled to, oh, aisa bhi ho sakta hai kya? Right. If you've shared this with other people. So I think this is, to me, any change that is brought about in financial empowerment of especially women, I call that always a change of a bigger order. I understand the implication of that on a family and hence overall at a national level, the implication it can have. So the fact that people of all these kinds of varieties are coming together and saying that they want to run a franchisee in itself is a remarkable thing. It's a good trend in the right direction for entrepreneurship. So let's understand now, there are, you've got 82 cities you mentioned, right? And you've identified these profiles that these are the right kinds of people. How are you finding these people? What is your way? How was it in the beginning? and now at a later stage, how is it now today?
So one is, so I'll talk about two different sources. One is what we call the organic sources, and the second is what you call the inorganic or the paid sources.
Right.
So one is we attend and we also organize a lot of franchisee events.
Got it.
Something as simple as how to start a laundry business, where the idea is not to directly push UClean. So we do these seminars, or we used to do them before COVID came in. So we used to go to these cities in India, and we used to organize these seminars where we would take a conference room inside a 5-star hotel or the best hotel in that town. And we would invite prospective investors, for which we would use Facebook campaigns, we would use Instagram campaign, LinkedIn campaigns, as well as give out advertisements in the local newspaper saying that the management team or the founder of UClean is going to be in your city to talk about how to start a laundry business. And the idea would be twofold. One would be to help them understand what does it entail when you're talking about starting a laundry and dry cleaning business, and second, why should you not do it on your own, and how you can fast track your growth if you partner with a brand like UClean. So that was more of a subtle pitch.
But you would still advise them that even if you don't partner with us, we're still going to, disseminate this knowledge to you.
Yeah, we would love to, because at the end of the day, I very strongly believe that this industry has been lagging behind all other industries when it comes to organizing it. You look at all unorganized industries today, everybody is saying that it is, say, at least 20% organized. But when you look at the laundry and dry cleaning industry, it is still less than 5% organized. So I want to increase the share of the organized business in laundry industry, ideally through UClean, but even if it's not through UClean, I would still want you to do it.
Wow. So basically, this was pre-COVID. A lot of it was physical interaction and via these campaigns that you would attract people who are interested in setting up a laundry business, and then they get to know that they have this option of UClean as well, which is way better a pitch than to say, hey, we are UClean, get a franchisee model from us, get to know more about by attending over a lunch. Right? Which is a very different
Correct.
So essentially, you were trying to build your credibility and authority through your expertise in this space, and then say we can help you with this expertise, right?
Yeah. And then during COVID, obviously seminars moved to webinars, but I'm not a big fan of webinar. I did a lot of webinars, but I also prefer doing it face to face, knowing someone's background, shaking hands with him, understanding what is his background story, and then advise him whether it's a good fit or not. And there have been cases where I have very strongly felt that someone is not a good fit and someone would end up wasting his entire investment. I've also advised them against it. Not the ideal thing to do, but whenever I've seen that there is a case which is absolutely not going to go anywhere, and you're 100% certain that despite your best efforts, you would not be able to make his business profitable.
Yeah.
We have advised them against it, and there have been cases proved grossly wrong. So out of these 82 cities that I'm talking about, there are cities or towns that you had never heard of. So towns like Nirjuli, Naharlagun.
Wow.
The towns in Northeast India. And I still remember there was this very young 24-year-old lad from this small town called Nirjuli, which is in Arunachal Pradesh, and with a population of about 20,000 people. He reached out to me on LinkedIn saying that I want to give the gift of UClean to the residents of Nirjuli.
Wow.
And I didn't even respond. And he kept chasing me on LinkedIn. He kept messaging me again and again. And then finally I said, let's get on a webinar. And we did a video call, a Zoom call. Yeah. And I still remember almost 70 minutes of call where he spoke.
Right. So, the next question I had for you was, can you give me a little bit of overview of the model from the perspective of primarily the franchisee? And even within that, then how does it look different for an operator persona and an investor persona when they're actually running the business? When I say model, actually with some numbers on what to expect, how much do I invest, how much ROI do I get, where are the pitfalls, roughly that.
Sure. So Primarily, if you look at it, I would call UClean a micro format laundry model. And so something that can be set up on an area as small as 150 to 200 square feet also.
Right.
In fact, in Shimla, for example, because you either get very small outlets or you get very large outlets. So Shimla, we actually have set up outlets on even 100 square feet. So that is why this is a model which is micro format. So as a franchise owner, you either need to own an area of say 250, 300 square feet, or you need to rent out something similar. It should have ample water connection. It should have a certain level of electrical load inside the outlet because these machines are pretty heavy. Plus, there should be a provision for drainage as well as ventilation. And from a franchisee perspective, you need to invest about 15 to 16 lakh rupees, which includes about 7 lakh rupees is the cost of the machinery. So you get a laundry machine, you get a steam iron table, plus you have your voltage stabilizer, computer printer, etc. About 4 lakh rupees is the cost of the setup of the entire store. So this will include your electrical work, your plumbing, your civil work, fixtures.
That is all centrally controlled by your team.
So we do provide vendors who would go and do it for you. And they would make your store up and running within 30 days. Plus, we also charge a franchisee fee of 5 lakh rupees. So we charge you a franchisee fee of 5 lakh rupees against which we would give you the rights to set up an outlet in a certain location. So as an example, say in Bandra in Mumbai, and then it also allows you to use the brand name of UClean, plus gives you the exclusivity that we would not open up a second outlet in Bandra or within 2 kilometers of your outlet. Now, you will also need a 3-member team to run the show. So we completely help you in terms of recruitment and training. We will bring these guys, we will train them, we will deploy them at your store. And this 3-member team comprising a store manager, iron man and a delivery boy is good enough to run the show for you initially. But as your sales keep building up, your work and load keeps increasing, you will have to keep adding more team members. So there also we are there. We take care of the complete recruitment and training cycle.
Wow.
Because it's difficult. So if you look at a franchisee, it would be very difficult for him with no background in the laundry industry to actually source the right kind of manpower. So that is something that we have learned. We have learned the hard way. And that is why we also run a small training school in Faridabad, which is where we are headquartered, where we bring these unemployed young kids from Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha, and Northeast India. We train them for 30 days at our training center. And then wherever there is a requirement, we deploy them at those particular stores.
Wow. So you've basically taken care of almost everything. I mean, you've set up the store, you've gotten the manpower sorted, which is a big problem.
Absolutely.
To find a person and then to train that person well enough, right? So you've done that. Now, what does the store owner do on an ongoing basis essentially? What are they doing?
So ultimately the manpower is on their payrolls once they join the store. So managing that manpower is their responsibility.
Right.
Managing the daily sales, proactively reaching out to customers to seek their feedback. In case there is a customer complaint or escalation, work on resolving them. If you're not able to resolve it, then you're also required to escalate it to our central customer delight team. So we have a 3-member team sitting out of our head office in Faridabad. And these guys are veterans when it comes to handling customer escalations. So for whichever store, if they're not able to handle an issue on the ground and the issue seems to be really serious, they are immediately required to escalate it to the customer delight team. And which is when the customer delight team will initiate a dialogue with the customer, try to find out the root cause and then try to resolve it. So that support we provide, but ultimately it's your show. You are running the show, the profit is yours, the loss is yours. So you need to be involved, you need to make sure that your store is performing.
Wonderful. So now that the store is set up, right? And this person has taken ownership of running it, the profit, loss, everything is now on them. What is the revenue share equivalent model that you have? How much do I pay you, and how much am I left with at the end of this month? Just a tentative ballpark of that.
Yeah. So this is franchising. So franchising has a terminology called royalty. So unlike other businesses, franchising, while it's still a commission, but in franchising we call it royalty. So we charge a royalty which is 7% on the sales. So whatever is your sales, we will 7% is our share, 93% is your share. We won't charge you any royalty for the first 3 months of operations, which is your teething period. So we understand that it would take you at least 3 months before you start making money. 4th month onwards, we'll charge you a royalty which is 7% of your sales after taxes. And then typically store. So if you realize the biggest beauty of laundry business is that it's a very hardcore subscription based model. Say if you're a 3 or 4 member
amazing
family,
repeat customer. Wow.
Correct. So the older the store, the higher is the number of repeat customers, the lower is the requirement for marketing. So your expenses start dipping down. So by the time a store is about 9 to 10 months old, an average store would be doing sales of about, again, depending on city, it could vary. About 3 to 3.5 lakh rupees per month is what you would be generating. And after removing all the expenses, including our royalties, your profit would be somewhere around 1.2 to 1.3 lakh rupees per month.
Wow, that's a very handsome profit, in fact, for most people who want to set up a business like this, actually.
Yeah, you would be, if you're even, I would honestly say that even if you're semi-committed, whatever you're investing, you should be able to recover it in less than 24 months. The gestation period and the recovery time, when you look at other industries like salon or a restaurant or a fitness chain, is very, very high. It would take you anywhere between 30 to 36 months to recover the investment that you're making in a salon or a restaurant or a gym chain. But in laundry, and I'm not just talking about UClean, I'm talking about a laundry business. If you do it right, you are able to recover your initial investment anywhere between 18 to 24 months.
Understood. So now that we understand the business model and some revenue figures around it, I want to understand what are the biggest challenges that a franchisee faces while running, which is where they need your support most, and what are the biggest challenges you face when working with your franchisees that need to be overcome in creative, innovative ways, now that you, of course, must have scaled and solved most of these problems by now.
So I would like to qualify this by my statement that franchisee relationship is like a shadi. It is nothing more, nothing
It sounds like a polygamous shadi to me, but
correct. But everyone is my wife or everyone is my husband, however you look at it. But whenever you're taking a decision to invest in a franchisee as an investor, or if I'm taking the decision to start franchising as a brand, I have to be mentally prepared to accept the fact that I am getting into a marriage. And this is not a short-term marriage. ऐसा नहीं है कि 2 महीने, 4 महीने, 6 महीने, 8 महीने divorce हो जाएगा. The agreement period is a minimum of 5 years, which can be renewed for another 5 and another 5. So this is a long-term marriage that a franchisee and a franchisor are committing to it. And like with every marriage, you have to be prepared that you will have ups and downs, and a lot of them. But the franchisee will always feel that he's not getting the kind of support that he should be getting. The franchisor will always feel that the franchisee is hiding sales, or the franchisee is not being true to the brand. And these challenges, these no-jokes would continue. But the idea is that despite this, the beauty of the franchising business is that you are not the only entrepreneur who is building UClean. Today, I cannot say that I am the only entrepreneur or I am the founder of UClean who is building UClean. There are more than 300 partners across India who are all working together with me to build UClean. So wherever we are today, it is not just because I or my team has put a lot of blood and sweat and the brand has become big. It is also the 300 franchise partners on the ground who are servicing the customers day in and day out. They have also contributed to taking UClean to where we are today.
Wow. Right. So I understand that, and when it comes about franchisee, there has to be a lot of mutual understanding. And the analogy of marriage is quite an interesting one. So, okay, let's look at, some of the finer things a little bit, right? I want to understand from your perspective, what is the biggest value addition that you think you provide to a franchisee on an ongoing basis, not for the first setup time, of course, but an ongoing basis? And what is the incentive for a store to stick with you after the first 5-year period is done?
Sure. And I think a very valid question in that sense. because when you talk about franchising, one of the biggest challenges, or I would say one of the biggest milestone, is renewal of franchisee. So, and I'll give you an example, because you mentioned Koramangala is one store that you've used your service. Koramangala completed its 5 years in February this year, and they renewed the franchisee.
Nice.
They're phenomenal guys. So this is one example of an operator mindset person. So the franchise owner actually sits at the store. Right,
yes, I remember.
He's the one who actually shutter.
He's a retired guy. I think he's 60 plus now, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So वही shutter उठाते हैं, वही shutter गिराते हैं.
Oh, wow.
That's the kind of commitment that he has. And I will give you a lot of credit. So whatever he has made out of UClean Koramangala, I would say it is 80% the franchisee and 20% by the brand. But that 20% includes a lot of finer elements. So for example, we are today one of the biggest discovery platforms when people are looking for laundry services.
Correct.
So when you go to any city in India and you start searching for laundry services, the probability that UClean will come on the first Google page is very, very high. So that is one reason. And because if you look at it, customers today are searching for services online. Almost everybody is moving online. Google has become the biggest search engine. Google has become the biggest recommender for services. So something that a local franchisee partner will not be able to do it on his own.
Correct.
So that is one of the biggest value add. So we are the biggest discovery platforms for potential customers for any of our franchise partners located anywhere in India. And the second, which I always keep talking about, is the challenge of recruitment. Like I said, it is not easy to recruit manpower and to train manpower. And very importantly, laundry industry mein attrition, like any other industry, blue collar attrition can happen any day without any forewarning, and suddenly your guy is gone. Now what do you do? आपके पास लोड पड़ा हुआ है स्टोर पे और आपका आयरन मैन का सुबह फोन आया कि सर मेरी शादी फिक्स हो गई है, मैं चला गया हूँ. आप उसको बोल रहे हो नहीं, आप आ जाओ, आज का लोड निपटा दो. सर मैं नहीं आ सकता, मैं तो ऑलरेडी बस में हूँ. And this happens.
That is right. That is very practically what happens.
तो blue collared है तो ये challenges आते हैं. So at that point in time when they reach out to us, we make sure we do keep some people who are mobile, who are on our payrolls, who are operations team on the ground. We make sure that these people then go there to the store and help resolve whatever load is there. So this is something, again, franchisees single-handedly cannot maintain an extra manpower or call him a stepney. You cannot have a stepney with you all the time and keep paying him salary when he doesn't have work. But we as a brand, because we are catering to so many franchise partners across India, we do have these stepneys. We actually call them stepneys, and they love being called stepneys. So they are there to troubleshoot whenever required.
Wow. No, so I think now that makes sense, because I've often wondered about the same question that, you know, especially you said it's a subscription based business. So the moat has to be something which retains its value over a longer period. And as you said, customer acquisition, especially in an area like Koramangala or even the entire Bangalore, where the churn of people living in a locality would be much higher than a place like Jaipur, let's say.
Absolutely.
Right? People come into Koramangala and they leave within 6 months, 18 months, 24 months, 36 months. This is the typical period that a guy living on rent in Koramangala would be doing. And they're probably the bigger customer than the people who are living with their families, I would say. Right? In many localities, right, good share would be there. So this combined with your recruitment thing seems to be your mode. Do a lot of other franchisee brands also adopt the same strategy, or is it something that you had to carve out for your own problems?
So again, I like to qualify this. As a brand, we are still very young. So while I mentioned that the Koramangala franchisee has renewed their agreement, I'll also be honest that the number of franchisees that are up for renewal is still very small.
Right.
So I cannot make a tall claim saying that मेरा हर franchisee renew करता है. That time
Fair
will
enough.
tell. Next 5 years are going to be very critical, because next 5 years में सारे 300 franchisee का renewal due होगा.
Wow.
And that will be the real test of what we have built. उसमें कितने percentage renew करते हैं will tell us whether we have built a really credible brand from a franchisee perspective or not. But I would say different brands have adopted different strategies, but at the same time, the renewal in franchise business, and not only in India. So US is the mecca of franchising industry. US has taught everybody what franchising is. And I was speaking to this guy who runs a company called Francop in the US, which is a very big company. and he was saying that in US the rate of renewal is 50%. So 50% of the franchisees do not renew, and this is
this is for overall market or this is for top franchisees? There's a huge difference there.
Yeah, this is overall market. So a McDonald's franchisee would renew,
exactly.
A Burger King franchisee would renew, but a lot of other franchisees won't.
So average 50% is still a high number because a lot of new franchisees keep coming up. Not everyone works. Not everyone is loved enough by the customer. Not everyone is a big brand. So 50% is a very high number. It sounds like that to me.
Because I agree, and because US is a very mature market.
Exactly.
When you look at franchising, I would say I don't know about the India statistics, but I'm very confident that could be less than 50% in India.
Wow. Yeah, because I remember having a couple of these discussions with some of my relatives in Jaipur here who were considering whether or not to pick up a franchise. I forgot what the name of the business was, but their notion, and a lot of franchisee owners' notion, it seems to me, and I can be wrong here, is that एक बार ये कर लेते हैं, फिर समझ जाएंगे और फिर अपनी दुकान डाल लेंगे, इसमें क्या है, right? That is a typical notion because the baniya dimag, and I am a baniya, so I am calling myself in that. The baniya dimag is, मुझे जब आ गया है तो मैं इनको पैसे क्यों बांटूं?
Absolutely.
Right? You get that notion, right? So that's the mindset, and that is why I think you've shown a lot of humility in answering this question, saying that, listen, we haven't seen enough cycles happen of this renewal, so I can't say for 100% sure, and that's very unlike that's very unlike a brand who would probably position themselves in authority that मैं कह रहा हूँ तो होगा. Right? I like that approach a lot. Thank you. So cool. So this now that we, I want to have last a couple of questions here, and then we'll probably wind up today's podcast. So let's say I want to help some people who are thinking about these questions a lot, right? For someone who's watched till here, gets a sense of why franchisee, why not, right? But now I want to make a personal decision, let's say, or I want to advise a friend of mine that, you might want to consider franchising, taking up a franchisee instead of opening your own store, right? What are some key decision-making criteria which go into deciding what kind of business to pick for the kind of person I am with whatever background and skills, whatever geography I am in, and so on? So how do I make this decision? Can you make it easy to decide which franchisee business should I go for, and what are the things I need to watch out for? What will you advise me? And this is not about UClean, this is about in general.
Sure. So I think one factor which is very, very important to consider is whether you are someone who comes in with an operator mindset or an investor mindset. And this is something that you cannot stress upon enough. I have seen people gone horribly wrong with this decision in the past, where somebody with an investor mindset invested and then realized that this business requires a lot of time commitment, and he ended up winding up the business, losing a lot of money. And this is not UClean. I'm actually talking about somebody who took the franchisee of a very good restaurant chain and a very famous South Indian restaurant chain, and he invested about 65 lakh rupees in setting up an outlet of this restaurant chain in Ahmedabad. And then within 4 months, he wound up the business because he realized that he has to come to the store every day. So one is, I think the biggest decision that you can take is whether you are someone who is willing to spend your entire day for the next 5 years at this particular business or not. This is the first thing that you need to consider. Second is investment. I have seen a lot of people underestimating their capital investment. So you have to also understand that when brands talk about investment of 20 lakhs, 30 lakhs, 50 lakhs, they're talking about an investment to make the store go live. But then you also have to consider working capital. No business, regardless of whatever they are committing, no business is going to become profitable in the first month. If you're lucky, it might, but the probability of that happening is very, very low. So maybe for the first 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, you might end up making losses. So you need to also budget for that working capital, that at least six months ka loss assume karke chalna hai, and make sure that you're budgeting for the working capital for that 6 months to survive. So this is the second very, very important factor that they need to consider. Third is why you are taking the business. So I have seen, and I'll give you an example from UClean again. So I had a franchisee a very young guy from Kurukshetra. He had taken a franchisee, and one of his friend has taken a franchisee of barista coffee. And this friend of his, he used to post literally every 4 hours on Instagram, making some coffee, doing some coffee art and doing whatnot. And then he called me one day and he said, sir, he is doing so much on Instagram. मैं क्या दिखाऊं कि मैं कपड़े धो रहा हूं, मैं iron कर रहा हूं. So that is also an important decision. Laundry, for example, does not have any glamour.
Yeah, I was actually thinking of this. I was about to ask this question, but you brought it out. Yeah, it's being unglamorous can be indeed a factor actually, where coffee versus this and is this something that you actively, proactively address in your discussions with people, potential franchisees then?
It was very, very common till about when we started off. So there have been cases जहाँ पर एक बंदा आया, ऑफिस में मिला, मैं खुद मिला उससे, वो पूरा कन्विंस हो गया कि सर कल मैं आपको टोकन अमाउंट ट्रांसफर कर दूंगा, मेरे लिए लोकेशन ब्लॉक कर दो. And then when we call him up, we keep waiting for him. We are very excited कि आज एक फ्रेंचाइज साइन होने वाला है. The entire team is ready कि आज समोसा पार्टी होगी, फ्रेंचाइज आ रहा है. And we wait till the evening and then he doesn't show up. And then all the act around being pricey ends and we decide कि चलो कॉल कर लेते हैं, ये तो नहीं आया. And when we call him, he said कि sir, I am very convinced, बहुत अच्छा आइडिया है, लेकिन मेरे पापा बोल रहे हैं कि धोबी बनेगा क्या. So that stigma is still there. I would not say that UClean has done a fantastic job in removing that stigma around becoming a dhobi when you start a laundry business. So that is also something that will happen. So you have to be mentally prepared कि you have to get a buy-in from your family, from your closest friends, because if they are not there to support you, then also life is going to become very difficult. So it is as important as all the other factors put together.
Wow. Now that you brought this out, how do you respond to that? How do you personally, like, लोग कहते होंगे ना कि IIT से पढ़ाई कर ली पर लास्ट में तो धोबी का काम कर रहा है. अगर किसी ने ऐसा कहीं ना कहीं तो रिमार्क दिया होगा पक्का से. I know that because I used to do this. I work at a startup called Agrix Lab. And I was building the entire product from ground up. Now that was an AI product. Okay. So I was doing supposedly tech stuff. And when I used to talk to people and they were asking क्या करते हो, तो I was telling them कि agriculture में AI का एक tool है. बोलते उसमें क्या करते हो? I told them कि हम आलू की बोरी लेते हैं and we spread that bori out, take photograph, get automatic image recognition से we grade it out कि what quality, what size, what color, everything it is, and basis that what price you should pay when you're procuring in bulk in tons and trucks, right? And they're like, and they would often laugh about it. It's in a joking way, but they would say कि अच्छा तुम इतना IIT करके लास्ट में तुम आलू का धंधा कर रहे हो. So it's which is I'm sure people also have had these discussions with you. How do you typically respond to that?
See, honestly, there is no right or wrong answer to this because obviously somebody who is challenging you that as an IITian तुम धोबी का काम कर रहे हो,
correct.
He's not going to go back regardless of whatever you're commenting. He will still end up saying कि हाँ चलो ठीक है जो भी कर रहे हो तुम धोबी का ही काम कर रहे हो. So all we say is that my simple example is कि आप देखोगे तो जितने भी consumer led industries हैं, जहाँ पे consumer facing industries हैं, they have all seen a lot of upheavals that have happened in the last 10-20 years, and a lot of positive changes have happened, a lot of organization has happened, whether you talk about the food industry, you talk about any other industry. But this industry unfortunately has still remained highly unorganized due to lack of transparency, lack of technology, lack of trust. And that is what we're trying to build. End of the day, we are doing exactly what the dhobis are doing. And in fact, I keep saying that a lot of credit to the dhobis, who are the foundation, the pillar behind this $75 billion industry. We just want to make things better. We want to make things transparent. And we want to make things convenient for the customer.
No, fair enough. So you pull out your classic UClean pitch and then tackle these such remarks with sincerity instead of a comeback. But I like that. So, I think we've covered quite a lot of things now, and I really enjoyed having this conversation because I think I learned a lot, and anyone who's watching this will also find this very valuable. And all of us have at one point considered, or one of our friends and family has considered whether or not to go for franchisee business. There are many people who find a lack of certain degree of conviction and confidence that क्या मैं अकेला कर पाऊंगा क्या business, या ओवर कॉन्फिडेंस में कोई बिजनेस कर लिया है, बट kind of there are gaps which you realize after 3 years of stumbling around. So I find that franchisees are a great solution to that kind of a challenge. There are a bunch of SOPs and training that you take care of, which matters a lot on day one, right? So I think we've covered enough about that, and I want to close this entire discussion that we have by asking you this one question, which is not necessarily related to our discussion or franchisee now, but I want to know from you, what do you personally believe is one of the biggest trends that is shaping the next decade of business and consumer?
So honestly, I feel that, and this is something that I've been working on also, is that customer engagement will decide the stickiness of your customer. So the more you engage and not overdo it, the more you engage with the customer, the more the customer will start believing you, and the higher is the probability of you retaining the customer for the longest possible time. So it could be something as simple as a WhatsApp nudge, where you ask him for a simple feedback, or where you ask him whether they have a load of clothes at this point in time which they require to be picked up, but without being too in the face. So I feel that the next decade will be for brands that are, and which is where your AI and ML and everything would come into play, is that how actively you're engaging your customers, how actively you're seeking their feedback without being too in the face or without being too obstructive.
Got it. Just 1 second. So yeah, okay, done. So I think that is brands who are focusing a lot on customer engagement will see the best customer retention, is the prediction that we have here. And I vaguely remember I had a more comforting experience with UClean. Comforting is the way I would explain it. Sure. I'm not sure if that is a word that you use typically, but I experienced a more peace of mind while doing that. ठीक है, थोड़े पैसे ज़्यादा लग रहे हैं शायद तक. I wasn't even sure because I was living in Cormangla. I was new then. थोड़े पैसे ज़्यादा लग रहे हैं, but you know what? My shirt is more important to me, and these guys seem to be professional. That's how my first impression was then. And it's glad to hear this story from you personally. And I really appreciate this time that you've taken out and all the knowledge that you shared. It's not common that someone with a decade of experience in this industry would come up and share so candidly a lot of these insights. So thank you so much, Arunabh. Again, I really appreciate this.
Thank you, Nivedan. And I'm someone who had been personally following your podcasts. So like I said in the beginning, opportunity to actually come on the podcast and share my journey is something that I was really looking forward to, and really glad that you gave so much time to me.
Perfect.
Thank you, Nivedan.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'm going to just quit this. So thank you everyone who's been watching this. This is Nivedan again from Coffee and Startups, and we had Arunabh Sinha on our podcast today, the founder of UClean.